Thank you for watching Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Budnam. Following are the world news by American, European, and Canadian channels. African, Asian channels and all news agencies have reported the same news. Now the headlines. Justice Department and 16 states have sued Apple for maintaining monopoly in America. House Speaker tried to maintain his majority intact in Congress. A Congresswoman and non-viable pregnancy. Anthony Blinken is in Egypt for Gaza war. Israeli claim of killing 140 Palestinians near Al-Shifa hospital. Ukraine received barrage of missiles from Russia. No casualty reported. European Union frozen all Russian assets. Police officers receive sentences from the court. High school is a death investigation. Mr. Biden and his students' loan. Now the news in detail.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel's assault on Al-Shifa, the largest hospital in Gaza, has entered a fourth day. Al Jazeera is reporting Israel's blown up the entire specialist surgery center at the hospital. Israel has now ordered a full evacuation of the medical complex where thousands of Palestinians had sought refuge and medical care. This comes as Israel continues to attack areas across the Gaza Strip, including the Al-Nusrat refugee camp in central Gaza.
We saw a frightening sight, body parts. We found the whole area destroyed. The whole area was hit with a belt of fire. They have not done anything. They don't know the resistance or anything. Their mother and her children. Her husband is wounded inside. Her husband is an employee of the Palestinian Authority. He distributes gas. He has nothing to do with the resistance or anything. The whole area was hit with a belt of fire. And the children, as you can see, they have been dismembered. We're here collecting their limbs from under the rubble. There are children still there. We will bury them and then go search for others.
As the death toll in Gaza approaches 32,000, aid groups continue to warn of catastrophic hunger across the Gaza Strip. Mohammed Slim is a Palestinian mother in Gaza City who said her son was killed while trying to get aid.
I want what I'm saying to reach the whole world so they can see what Israel is doing to the poor Palestinian people. We have been 6 months. 6 months. They are children. What have they done to deserve this? We are tired. We no longer have energy. The children in the south and the north are dying of hunger. What has a baby done to die of hunger?
On the diplomatic front, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's in Egypt today after a stop in Saudi Arabia. At the United Nations, the U.S. has submitted a draft resolution to the UN Security Council for an immediate temporary ceasefire in Gaza tied to the release of hostages. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told Republican senators in a closed-door video conference that Israel would continue its assault on Gaza. Netanyahu reportedly blasted Democratic Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who's called for new elections in Israel and turned down Netanyahu's request to address Democrats. This comes as over 100 Democratic donors and activists have written to President Biden's campaign, warning the president's support for Israel's assault could cost him the election, saying, quote, because of the disillusionment of a critical portion of the Democratic coalition, the Gaza war is increasing the chances of a Trump victory, unquote. U.S. lawmakers are moving towards cutting off funds for the next year to UNRWA, the UN Palestinian Relief Agency, despite the looming famine in Gaza. A massive new spending bill being considered by Congress would extend a suspension on U.S. funding for the agency until at least March 2025. Last year, the U.S. gave the agency $370 million. Australia recently became the latest country to resume funding the agency, following a temporary pause after Israel claimed without providing evidence that UNRWA staff were involved in the October 7th attacks. Meanwhile, internal UN documents obtained by The Guardian reveal Israeli forces in the occupied West Bank have systematically harassed UN workers. Some have been beaten and blindfolded at checkpoints. Israel's also reportedly used UN facilities to fire on Palestinians living in refugee camps. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador blasted Texas's anti-immigrant SB 4 law on Wednesday as U.S. courts continue to wrangle over its legality. The law grants Texas authorities broad powers to arrest and deport anyone they suspect of crossing the border without authorization. This is AMLO.
We are against this draconian law, which is completely contrary to human rights. If they intend to do deportations, which is not up to them, we won't accept deportations from the Texas government, and we will not stand idly by.
The law is currently blocked after the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals moved to halt the measure Tuesday, just hours after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled the law could go into effect. Immigrant justice advocates warn SB 4 would have devastating effects on immigrant communities throughout the state of Texas. This is Fernando Garcia, director of the Border Network for Human Rights.
If allowed to proceed, it would have a terrible impact on communities. We are talking about the fact that not only migrants crossing the border would be impacted by the state immigration policy of Governor Abbott, but in general, Texans, migrants in Houston, in Dallas, and Fort Worth will be subject to a policy of persecution by local and state police, where they will be asking them for immigration papers, detaining them, and also deporting them to Mexico.
In Georgia, prison officials executed William James Pye in the state's first execution in over 4 years. 59-year-old Willie Pye was put to death with an injection of pentobarbital after the U.S. Supreme Court denied a clemency appeal despite his lawyers arguing he was, quote, intellectually disabled, unquote, and that the state of Georgia was not ready to resume executions after halting the practice during the pandemic. Pye's supporters and anti-death penalty advocates gathered for a vigil Wednesday ahead of his execution. Kathy Harmon Christian is executive director of Georgians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty.
On the death certificate, it will say homicide. The state is committing homicide. And that's what's on Willie Pye's death certificate. The drug itself for this particular lethal injection, to my knowledge, is a single dose drug. And my understanding is that what it will do, Willie Pye will experience boiling in his own blood.
In Mississippi, 2 more former sheriff's deputies were sentenced Wednesday for torturing and sexually abusing 2 black men in January 2023. Christian Dedman was sentenced to 40 years in prison and Daniel Updike to 17 and a half years. The men were part of a group of officers that called themselves the Goon Squad. A total of 6 officers have admitted to beating, handcuffing, waterboarding, and tasering Michael Corey Jenkins and Eddie Terrell Parker inside a home in a majority white county outside Jackson, Mississippi. 2 other members of the Goon Squad were sentenced on Tuesday. The Wall Street Journal is reporting the U.S. Justice Department and lawyers for Julian Assange have had preliminary discussions about a possible plea deal that could lead to the imprisoned WikiLeaks founder being released from prison. However, Assange's legal team says they have been given no indication the Justice Department intends to resolve the case. Julian Assange has been held in London's Belmarsh prison since 2019, awaiting possible extradition to the United States, where he faces up to 175 years in prison for publishing classified documents exposing U.S. war crimes. In a surprise move, Ireland's leader, Prime Minister Leo Varadkar, announced Wednesday he is resigning, stating simply, quote, "The time has come to pass on the baton."
No, inevitably there'll be speculation as to the quote-unquote real reasons for my decision. These are the real reasons. That's it. I have nothing else lined up. I have nothing in mind. I have no definite personal or political plans. But I'm really looking forward to having the time to think about them.
At 45, Varadkar is Ireland's youngest ever Prime Minister or Taoiseach. He's also Ireland's first openly gay leader and first Indian and mixed race leader. On Sunday, he called for a Gaza ceasefire as he joined President Biden at the White House for St. Patrick's Day celebration. In Hong Kong, lawmakers unanimously passed a new national security law that further cracks down on dissent and free speech. Article 23 expands the definition of certain offenses and targets treason, insurrection, sabotage, external interference, theft of state secrets, and espionage. It also allows for closed-door trials and imposes harsher penalties, including life imprisonment in some cases. The bill's passage marks a major defeat for pro-democracy activists and critics of Beijing's tightening grip on Hong Kong. In related news, a Hong Kong court Saturday sentenced 12 people to prison terms of 6 to 7 years after they were convicted of rioting when they stormed the city's legislature during the 2019 pro-democracy uprising. Hundreds of protesters breached and vandalized the government building on July 1st, 2019, the 22nd anniversary of Britain's handover of Hong Kong to China. Indonesia's election committee officially declared Prabowo Subianto the winner of the February 14th presidential poll, securing over 58% of the vote. It was Prabowo's 3rd attempt after losing twice to outgoing President Joko Widodo. He'll assume office alongside Vice President-elect Gibran Rakebuming Raka, who is Joko Widodo's son. Prabowo, the son-in-law of former Indonesian dictator Suharto, the ex-son-in-law, is a U.S.-backed former general who's been implicated in mass killings in East Timor, Papua, and Aceh, as well as the kidnapping and torture of activists in Jakarta. In environmental news, the Biden administration announced new rules curbing tailpipe emissions for passenger cars and light-duty trucks. The new standards call for a 56% reduction in average carbon emissions by 2032. The Environmental Protection Agency hopes the rule will help propel the sale of electric vehicles, or EVs, which last year made up less than 8% of all new car sales. While it's the greatest ever limits imposed on tailpipe emissions, climate groups criticize the EPA for slowing down the transition to EVs after the agency's initial proposal was met with backlash from the auto and fossil fuel industries. The Biden administration's announced another $6 billion in federal student loan cancellation for 78,000 public service workers. Borrowers will benefit include teachers, nurses, and firefighters who've been repaying their loans for at least a decade. And Republican efforts to impeach President Biden could soon peter out after a second hearing failed to deliver any evidence pointing to President Biden's involvement in his son Hunter Biden's business dealings. With Republican support for the impeachment eroding, Congressmember James Comer, who's leading the impeachment inquiry, said he's weighing possible criminal referrals to the Justice Department instead of a lawmaker vote. New York Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez blasted the impeachment attempt during Wednesday's hearing.
Clearly, what we are seeing here today is a continuation of the 15-month saga of the Republican majority lost in the desert. This resolution does not outline a high crime or misdemeanor. It's not here.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report.
Here with Reaction, the host of Kudlow on the Fox Business Network, Business Channel, Larry Kudlow, along with former senior Clinton advisor and pollster Mark Penn, and Fox News contributor Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, we start with you. Between the issue, if you look at the border, and I know the giggly conspiracy theorists at MSNBC, they laughed at the exit polls that showed the state of Virginia that the number one issue on the minds of people in Virginia was immigration, where a 14-year-old girl was raped by an illegal immigrant. This on the heels of what happened to Laken Riley. By the way, not Lincoln, Laken Riley. And, you know, I raise this because are they really that out of touch with the American people on this issue? Are they out of touch with how they feel?
Yes, they are, and no one more so than Joe Biden and his so-called borders are Kamala Harris. The polls show this. The disaffection with Joe Biden is coming from inside the House. He is underperforming Donald Trump in all 6 swing states, and particularly as goes each man vis-a-vis their party. So Joe Biden averages somewhere in the 70s, low to mid-70s, in terms of Democratic support in each of the 6 swing states: Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. Donald Trump is anywhere from 81% to 91%. Why is that important? Because if you have attrition in your core constituencies, African Americans, Hispanics, women, people in the suburbs, young people, political independents, you open up, you expose yourself to third-party challenges. RFK Jr., Jill Stein, and Cornel West are all eating into Joe Biden. None of them are really taking anything significant from Donald Trump in terms of vote tally. You mentioned Nevada. This is important. A Republican has not carried the state of Nevada presidentially since 2004, 20 years ago. Donald Trump is beating Joe Biden in the polls in Nevada. Nevada has the highest unemployment rate, one of the highest housing costs compared to wages in the country, and is the only state that went from a blue governor, Democratic governor, to Republican governor in 2022. That's the kind of state that Donald Trump can flip, and it's all because of what you're showing. People know what they see, not what the Democrats say. They see the borders out of control. 60% disapprove of Joe Biden's handling of Israel. Over 60% disapprove of his handling of the economy and inflation, and separately of the border and immigration. It's not a big mystery.
Mark, you've been doing polling like Kellyanne for a long time. We really saw this on display in the strongest way during the State of the Union, or Jacked Up Joe, and that was he was going so hardcore after his base. There was no reaching across the aisle. This was a speech I'd expect at a convention at the DNC. And Biden is down 22 points with Hispanic Americans right now from where he was in 2020. He is down 30 points with African Americans. Double digits he's down with suburban women and young people. That is the base of the Democratic coalition. I don't know, what can he say or do to get those people back? Maybe half of them will return home, but the people that are feeling the economy, that don't like what they're seeing on their screen right right now with immigration, the people that don't like what's going on worldwide and America abdicating its role on the world stage, the price of everything, law and order is deteriorating in big cities and small towns. They're looking at their lives, and they're not saying they're better off than they were 4 years ago. How does he get those people back? Or can he?
Well, I think you're quite right that Joe Biden has to look more at the center of the country, and the suburbs and those swing voters, and not worry so much about the base. Don't worry, those base voters will come back in the end when they're faced with a stark choice between Democrats and Republicans and Trump and Biden. But he's got to do more. He's got to solve the immigration problem because that has skyrocketed to number one. He's got to do something about the inflation and the high housing prices that really affect people's everyday lives.
For 3 years, he said the border is safe and closed and secure. He lied. Now he's trying to blame Republicans. You're saying that in the final 228 days, he can all of a sudden pull out of his hat an answer to the border crisis he himself created? I don't believe that's possible.
Well, look, I think the polls, and I agree with Kellyanne on this, his lowest ratings right now are on immigration, which didn't matter much during most of that 3 years. But now that it's shot up to be the top issue of the country, he's got to do a better job addressing it. He's got to really both show compassion to people like DACA recipients, but most importantly, do something about what most voters think is an open border. I don't think he has any choice. It's the absolute key to what he's got to do to try to get back here to even. He's just losing by Donald Trump by a few points, and immigration is that number one issue. He's got to address inflation, got to address crime, education. Sure, he's got core issues like abortion and climate change, but we know those. Rally the base at the end. Go for swing voters now.
I'm listening to you, but I'm sure you're right that some of those people will come home, but I'm sure many won't either. And I would argue, Larry Kudlow, that the reason they will not be so inclined to get home because they don't like what they're seeing on the border. They don't like what they see in their grocery store. They don't like that their dollar is not going anywhere near as far as it was 4 years ago. They don't like defund, dismantle, and no bail laws. They don't like high gas prices. They don't like any of it. Why should they?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And I want to go back to those pictures, incredible pictures. That is an invasion of the state of Texas, and it is an invasion of the United States by a mob of illegals. And that picture, which runs throughout the country, is a message that there is no safety, no security, and no law and order. I mean, Trump calls it Biden's immigration crime. And that crime is not just down there in El Paso or Texas. That crime has become nationwide. You know, the story in New York, $4.5 billion of stolen goods from the stores. Who knows, it probably is even greater than that. So that picture is important. Mark Penn is a very smart guy, and he's an old friend of mine. But the fact remains, Biden will not close the border. When he was inaugurated, the next couple days, he undid by executive orders all of the Trump guards against the kind of picture we're seeing in El Paso. He took out the Remain in Mexico. He took out the wall. He increased the parole. He increased the asylum. And again, it's not just the fact that all these illegal mobs are coming in, which is bad enough. It just sends a picture that there is no law, no order, no safety, no security. And remember, Trump is building this phenomenal middle-class working folks coalition of whites, of Latino, Hispanics, of blacks. Take a look at the numbers. They're phenomenal. These are people who are losing money. Their real wages are going down. Prices are still high. 20% increase in the CPI, 20% increase in groceries, 30% increase in energy. Their mortgage rates and mortgage costs, if they want to buy a home, over 7% on the rate. It probably costs you another $1,500 than it did 3 years ago. Car purchases, you got to pay about 10% on that rate. Credit card purchases, you got to pay about 25% on that rate. So you have these economic pressures, you have these fears of law and order, and you have pictures of literally an invasion of the United States by a lawless mob. It is absolutely astounding, and I do not think Biden will lift one finger to change that. I don't see any evidence that he wants to change that.
That ship has sailed. And like you, I've known Mark a long time. Mark, you're going to smile because you know what I'm about to say is true. You would have told him to pivot 2.5 years ago. True or false? Last answer.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely true. Yes. I've been saying this for a while. Pivot.
These are very, very dangerous people.
Tonight, the massive manhunt for 2 armed fugitives is over.
There was a short vehicle pursuit. Both suspects were taken into custody separately.
Idaho police arrest the men responsible for what authorities say was a planned attack that led to the shooting of 3 officers.
The motive and why they did what they did, I don't know.
The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening and thank you for joining us on this Thursday. I'm Jerika Duncan in for Nora. We begin tonight with some breaking news. The manhunt for 2 armed and dangerous suspects in Idaho has come to an end. Idaho police say a prison gang member and his accomplice were taken into custody near the city of Twin Falls this afternoon following a brief car chase. Local and state police were joined by the FBI in the statewide dragnet following the daring and violent escape Wednesday of the convicted felon and white supremacist. 3 corrections officers were shot and wounded during the incident. Officials say they are also investigating 2 homicides that are potentially connected to the suspects. CBS's Carter Evans starts us off tonight with the latest details.
Skylar Mead and Nicholas Umfenauer are in custody.
Police say the search is over for the 2 fugitives who pulled off a violent prison escape in Boise. They were captured this afternoon in Twin Falls, about 130 miles away, but not before allegedly committing more acts of violence. Investigators suspect they killed 2 men while on the run.
We are investigating 2 homicides at separate locations in Nez Perce and Clearwater counties. These are potentially tied to this incident.
Mead made his well-coordinated escape during a shootout with prison guards outside a Boise emergency room Wednesday morning. Just as Mead exited the hospital where he'd been treated for self-inflicted injuries, police say Nicholas Umfenauer opened fire. 3 corrections officers were shot in the chaos and survived.
We know with near certainty this was not an accident. This was a planned event.
The Department of Corrections says both Mead and Umfenauer are known members of the Aryan Knights prison gang, a white supremacist group formed in Idaho's prison system in the 90s. At one point, they were both in prison together.
This isn't your average inmates who just jumped over a wall and are running. These guys have lots of help.
Former FBI agent Greg Rogers says he doesn't think they acted alone.
They're going to find out other members of the gang inside the prison were having contact with people on the outside and arrange times and dates and things like that.
Now, the arrest just happened, and police are still questioning the two men in Twin Falls. Both men will soon be facing even more charges that could now include murder. Tarika?
Carter Evans, thank you. Now to that antitrust lawsuit against Apple, the second largest company in the U.S. and the world. Its stock fell 4% today after the Justice Department accused the tech giant of hurting consumers by creating a monopoly in the smartphone market. CBS News senior business and tech correspondent Jolene Kent has more on what this could mean for iPhone users.
The Justice Department says Apple is running an iPhone monopoly.
Consumers should not have to pay higher prices because companies break the law.
The DOJ alleges Apple, worth $2.7 trillion, unfairly tries to keep users hooked on iPhones and charges high fees from app developers, costing consumers money.
Developers, artists, content creators are paying hefty fees. Banks and credit unions are now paying new credit card fees. These fees will cost the economy, the U.S. economy, billions of dollars.
Apple denies the allegations and says a victory for the government would also set a dangerous precedent, empowering government to take a heavy hand in designing people's technology. The DOJ specifically calls out Apple for allegedly boxing out other companies' devices to help keep track of items like keys, to give an edge to its own AirTag, and for allowing lower quality text messages between iPhone and Android users, creating what many call the blue and green bubble divide. Experts say this lawsuit will take years.
What will change for an iPhone user now that this lawsuit has been filed?
In the immediate future, nothing is going to change, right? These antitrust lawsuits are really complicated, but if the government is successful here, we could end up in a world where the iPhone is a much more open device that plays better with the rest of the tech industry and the rest of the world.
And tonight, the feeling inside Apple's Cupertino headquarters is to fight back hard against what they are calling a misguided assault. And the Justice Department says if left unchallenged, Apple will continue to strengthen its monopoly. Safe to say, both sides are ready for a major showdown in court. Jerika.
That's right, Jolene. It sounds like it's only the beginning. Thank you. Well, turning to the weather, where the first days of spring are feeling more like winter. Parts of Maine getting up to a foot of snow in the past 24 hours. The Midwest is also bracing for a blast of snow from the Dakotas to Michigan. For more on that, let's bring in our meteorologist, Mike Bettis, from our partners at the Weather Channel. Good evening, Mike.
Tarika, good evening. Yes, it is spring, but our northern states, almost every single one of them expecting snow over the next several days. First one comes in tonight and tomorrow, puts down a swath of snow through the upper Midwest. Places like Milwaukee could be looking at 3 to 5 inches of snow. Then eventually that system gets its act together across the Northeast. Could produce significant snow here and significant wind as well. Coastal flooding could be an issue as that system moves by. But look at some of the totals here, especially in the mountains. 1.5 to 2 feet of snow is on the way. Oh, and then there's another one that comes in beginning Sunday and may not wrap up until Tuesday. A big bullseye around central Minnesota, and with a foot to 1.5 feet of snow in the forecast, Tarika, a place like Minneapolis could see its biggest snow this season, eclipsing what it's had for all of winter.
All right, Mike, thank you. We are learning new details tonight about the steps the New York Attorney General has taken towards seizing former President Donald Trump's property. Now, this could happen if he fails to come up with that court-ordered payment of $464 million in his civil fraud case. When it comes to the campaign trail, however, the polls suggest a close race, but as CBS's Robert Costa reports, the race for campaign cash right now is no contest.
President Biden touching down in Houston today as his campaign fundraising takes off. With 3 donor gatherings in 2 days, the Democratic money machine is expected to bring in another $7 million, and Biden is courting high-profile donors like billionaire businessman Mark Cuban.
Let's beat him again.
Heading into March, Biden's campaign had $71 million on hand, more than double the $33 million in Trump's campaign account. And the president's affiliated political committees have outraised Trump's network by double digits.
There's only about 6 or 7 states that are going to determine the outcome of this election.
Biden launched a $30 million ad campaign in key battleground states with plans to open more than 100 field offices.
But they'd like to take the cash away, so I can't use it on the campaign.
Trump, meanwhile, has been forced to spend nearly $9 million on legal bills so far this year. That follows nearly $50 million last year. And the former president is now saying he can't secure the $464 million bond he needs to comply with the recent civil fraud ruling in New York, putting a long list of his prized properties at risk.
I have some of the greatest assets in the world, and there's a rigged trial.
Former federal prosecutor Renato Mariotti said it's possible Trump didn't plan ahead for such a ruling in the state's favor, or for such a staggering penalty.
So it's possible, I suppose, that he didn't plan for this at all. The other possibility is that he's not nearly as wealthy as he suggests that he is.
Trump today lashed out at New York Attorney General Letitia James, who filed the judgment from the trial in Westchester County, where his golf resort and Seven Springs estate are located, a sign that she may be planning to seize those assets. And another development today, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg pushed for Trump's criminal hush money trial to begin as soon as possible in mid-April. And if the judge agrees, sources tell me it could rattle the race, forcing Trump off the trail for weeks in the spring to sit in a courtroom. Tarika.
All right, Robert Costa, thank you. More Americans today escaped by helicopter from the gang violence and political turmoil in Haiti. CBS's Manuel Bojorquez was at the airport in neighboring Dominican Republic when the Americans got out.
More neighborhoods in Port-au-Prince are falling under the gang's reign of terror. Gunmen roam freely, killing, kidnapping, and looting as they go. They shot him dead, this man says, and then they burned his body. The chaos compounded by armed vigilantes around the capital fighting back to protect their neighborhoods. Thousands are desperate to flee, trying to get out any way they can. Today, a U.S. government-chartered helicopter again braved the dangerous conditions, flying citizens stuck in Port-au-Prince to the neighboring Dominican Republic. Nearly 1,600 passport holders have registered for help, but only roughly 30 a day can be rescued this way as long as it's safe. And here they come. Officials on the ground tell us it's a group of more than a dozen U.S. citizens who were able to board that helicopter in Port-au-Prince, and they've arrived here in Santo Domingo just before 1 p.m. From here, they will be processed through customs, and then they have the option of remaining in this country or trying to get a commercial flight to the United States.
They had this guy yesterday, they burned in a motorcycle.
Katiana Keisha Remador, wristband identifying her as an American, is trying to make her way home to her 2 children in Orlando. Her husband, who is not a U.S. citizen, had to stay behind.
I have one of my cousins, the gun just went to the house and asked her to leave the house.
They just kicked her out of the house like that.
And they just take everything.
This afternoon, another charter flight from Cap Haitian arrived in Miami, carrying 60 U.S. citizens.
It was very scary. There's not a lot of food.
A second evacuation flight landed here in Santo Domingo this afternoon. As for Haiti, with no elected leader in charge, gang leaders have tried to insert themselves into the process of forming a new government, slowing down the process and threatening even more violence. Tarika?
Manuel Bojorquez, thank you. The network that links DMVs across this country were hit by a computer outage today. This caused delays for people trying to get driver's licenses and vehicle titles. In some places, including Illinois, appointments had to be rescheduled. It's not clear yet what caused the problem. Well, a hot air balloon carrying passengers plunges to the ground after hitting power lines. We'll have the details next.
You've got the best deals on delicious food. Order now.
Food Panda, Food Panda.
Four years after the COVID pandemic shut down America's school systems, a nonprofit organization is helping New York City students get back on track. Here's CBS's Elaine Quijano.
School begins on a high note at Mosaic Preparatory Academy in New York City, where students are greeted like superstars. A stark contrast from 4 years ago when the doors were shuttered during the COVID pandemic and children like 9-year-old Joy Contreras, then a first grader, struggled with remote learning.
Sometimes it was blurry, and when I had my headphones on, people were screaming in my ears.
Crystal Arias remembers her daughter's frustration.
She kind of felt shut off. Like, her main thing was nobody's listening to me, because it's a lot of people, to scream. So that's just the example.
To help reverse pandemic learning loss, her school has partnered with City Year New York, which supplies teams of student success coaches serving as tutors, mentors, and role models in 17 public schools citywide. 23-year-old Jessica Solomon helps Joy with math and reading.
Joy's growth this year, academically and socially, emotionally, has been amazing.
They help me with my homework, and when I don't know something, my friends will help me there.
And the results are earning high marks. Last year, attendance went up 10% over the year before. State reading scores jumped 18%, and math scores increased 9%.
My favorite one is this one.
Joy's mother says even her confidence has grown.
What do you want to be when you grow up? A teacher, like my grandma. How come? Because teachers help kids learn, so when they grow up, they can be whatever they want.
I just feel so rewarded to be a part of their academic journey, especially in this transition out of the pandemic.
The importance of human connections, a lesson to remember. Elaine Quijano, CBS News, New York.
Well, Heart of America is next with a top secret World War II unit that's finally being honored. Finally, tonight's Heart of America. Meet the surviving members of a top secret World War II unit nicknamed the Ghost Army. Well, today they finally got their recognition by being awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. Their missions had more to do with the art of deception than the art of war. You see, they used inflatable tanks, fake radio dispatches, and even loudspeakers to sound like a much larger division. Their job was to fool the Nazis and draw attention away from the real battlefield. 3 of the 7 known surviving members were at the ceremony. Rick Beyer, the president of the Legacy Project, helped today come to fruition.
To project strength when you have none, to purposely draw enemy fire to keep it from falling on others, a dangerous business, not for the faint of heart. Today, the 1,300 men of the Ghost Army are finally getting their due.
World War II's Ghost Army, tonight's Heart of America. And that is the CBS Evening News. For Nora O'Donnell, I'm Jerika Duncan. Have a great night.
Tonight, we have breaking news coming in right now. The police ambush. 3 officers shot the white supremacist on the run, the accomplice who fired at the officers, where they have now been caught tonight, and authorities just moments ago revealing they now want to know, did they kill while on the run? Just a short time ago, news of this capture, the prisoner and the alleged accomplice who fired at those officers, surrounded and arrested. And just in tonight, authorities now say they are looking at 2 separate homicides in the last 36 hours that could be linked to this escape. Also tonight, the harrowing scene on the streets of Los Angeles. A city bus driver carjacked at gunpoint. The bus speeding through intersections, vehicles crashing into the side of the bus. Then the bus slamming into the Ritz-Carlton at high speed. The major new storm on the move tonight. Heavy snow and rain from Minnesota all the way to the Northeast. New flood watches now up at this hour from Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia to New York City. Rob Marciano timing this out. Tonight, Donald Trump facing this deadline now approaching to secure that $464 million bond in the civil fraud judgment against him. And the first steps already taken tonight by authorities. What the Attorney General tonight says she is ready to do, Aaron Katersky reporting. The Department of Justice filing a landmark lawsuit tonight against Apple. The DOJ in 16 states accusing the company of monopolizing the smartphone market, citing a list of examples, including that grainy video you get sometimes from non-Apple phones. How Apple is now responding. Tonight, Major League Baseball's highest paid star and the gambling scandal. Did he know about his interpreter's gambling debts or not? Did he help him? But our partners at ESPN are now reporting tonight. The major medical breakthrough in Boston, surgeons transplanting a kidney from a genetically engineered pig into a 62-year-old patient. The doctor today breaking down in tears on this breakthrough and what this could mean for so many. Tonight, another record day on Wall Street, the stock market hitting a new high as it nears a major milestone. And the very good news for 401ks. And America Strong tonight honoring our heroes, the Ghost Army of World War II. You'll see the images, how they pulled this off.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening. It's great to have you with us here on a very busy Thursday night. We do begin tonight with the breaking news, the capture after a 36-hour manhunt for an escaped prisoner, a white supremacist, and his alleged accomplice in Boise, Idaho, who fired at officers to help that prisoner escape. Late today, police revealing both men have been captured. Police say inmate Skylar Bean is a white supremacist gang member. Alleged gunman Nicholas Umfenauer is accused of ambushing those 3 corrections officers, and authorities also revealing just a short time ago they are now looking into 2 new homicides in the last 36 hours, potentially linked to those men. Authorities say the escape was planned, that the inmate deliberately injured himself so he would be taken to that hospital where the accomplice with the gun was waiting, firing at officers in the ambulance bay. Tonight, the pair captured more than 100 miles away from the scene, and now those 2 new homicides under investigation tonight. ABC's Victor Kendo in Idaho leading us off.
Tonight, more than 36 hours after maximum security inmate Skylar Mead was busted out of a Boise hospital by armed accomplice Nicholas Umfenauer, authorities say both men are in custody.
There was a short vehicle pursuit, and both suspects were taken into custody separately.
They were found in Twin Falls, about 130 miles southeast of Boise.
There were no shots fired or extensive use of force in this operation, for which we are thankful.
Authorities finding that gray Honda used in the escape abandoned, and they are now investigating 2 homicides in separate locations that they believe are linked to the escape.
We did find the shackles at the scene of one of the homicides, so that's one of the ways that we tied them together.
Police say Mead, who is a documented member of the white supremacist Aryan Knights prison gang, deliberately injured himself badly enough to have to go to the hospital. And when he was about to be transported back to prison, accomplice Nicholas Umfenauer opened fire. There's the ambulance bay where police say Umfenauer ambushed the officers around 2:15 a.m., firing multiple shots just feet away from the emergency room entrance. 2 officers were shot by the suspect and remain in the hospital. A third, shot accidentally by a responding Boise police officer, was released.
I think with today's news, their spirits are lifted.
Tonight, both Mead and Umfenauer will face a series of new charges as authorities investigate how they were able to coordinate this escape, which has since turned deadly. David?
Victor Kendo leading us off with late reporting here. Victor, thank you. We turn now to the harrowing scene on the streets of Los Angeles today. A city bus driver carjacked at gunpoint. The bus then speeding through intersections, vehicles crashing into the side of the bus, and that bus slamming into the Ritz-Carlton at a very high speed. ABC's Zoreen Shah in Los Angeles.
Tonight, this hijacked, out-of-control Los Angeles city bus caught on camera speeding through a busy intersection, cars slamming into its side. Just after 11 p.m., a man verbally threatening the bus driver before reaching into his waistband for a gun and ordering, "Just drive." The bus careening through traffic, the hijacker grabbing the wheel, colliding with an occupied vehicle before plowing into the Ritz-Carlton at a high speed. The suspect fleeing on foot, taken into custody, now being held on kidnapping charges. In front of the crash bus, police discovering what appeared to be a handgun that turned out to be a BB gun. The bus driver, the only other person on board at the time, and a passenger from one of the other vehicles, taken to the hospital. And David, you can see the damage here at the Ritz-Carlton right behind me. That bus driver was released from the hospital. The passenger is stable condition. David?
A frightening scene there in LA today. Zorine, thank you. We turn now to major new storm on the move tonight. Heavy snow and rain from Minnesota all the way to the northeast. Two systems will come together with this, one from the west, the other from the south. Tonight, new flood watches are now up from Washington, D.C. right there to Philadelphia, right up to New York City into New England. Let's get right to senior meteorologist Rob Marciano timing it all out for us. Hey, Rob.
Hi, David. That phasing of those two systems is what's going to make a mess coming here on Saturday. We've got winter storm watches and flood watches that are already posted, and winter weather alerts go all the way back to the Midwest where the flakes are flying there. 3 to 6 inches of snow, Minneapolis to Milwaukee. I think I-90 is going to be the spot where you see all the snow north of there. Look at that low in the south. Heavy rain coming and storms coming into the southeast, the South Carolina, and then those two storms squeeze together during the day on Saturday, and that's where all the heavy rain. DC up I-95, that's where the flash flooding is likely to occur. It does clear out quickly on Sunday, but not before dumping over a foot of snow across northern New York and New England. David?
Rob Marciano with us again tonight, Rob. Thank you. Tonight, Donald Trump facing his deadline now approaching to secure that $464 million bond in the civil fraud judgment against him. Tonight, authorities have now taken their first steps, and what the state attorney general in New York says she is ready to do. Here's Aaron Kursky.
Tonight, the pressure growing on Donald Trump as New York Attorney General Letitia James takes the first step towards seizing some of his assets if he can't meet Monday's deadline to post his $464 million bond. James filing documents to lay the groundwork to take over his golf course in a large estate in Westchester County. Trump's lawyers say he faces insurmountable difficulties in obtaining a bond. 30 insurance companies have turned him down because he doesn't have enough cash, and they won't accept his properties as collateral. Trump says the Attorney General is trying to force him to sell his real estate at fire sale prices, and if and when I win the appeal, they would be gone.
We have a lot of cash and we have a great company, but they want to take it away.
But Trump's lawyers tell the court Trump doesn't have enough cash to secure the bond, calling it a practical impossibility. When I spoke to James just after the trial, she told me Trump has to pay. Does he have the money to pay this?
That's really not my business. If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
We were sitting right across the street from one of those assets, Trump's 40 Wall Street. There's a building right just out the window.
Yes, I look at 40 Wall Street each and every day.
So 40 Wall Street, the apartment here at Trump Tower, all potential targets. If Trump cannot post a bond by the deadline of Monday, it's not like state officials are going to close down these buildings, but David, they could move to file liens to start to claim ownership, and that might give us a window into what some of Trump's assets are actually worth. David?
Aaron Kursky on this again tonight. Thank you. We turn next tonight to the Department of Justice filing a landmark lawsuit today against Apple. The DOJ in 16 states accusing Apple of monopolizing the smartphone market, citing a list of examples, including that grainy video iPhone users get sometimes from friends and family who don't have iPhones themselves. Tonight, how Apple is now responding to all of this, and here's our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas now.
Tonight, the Justice Department taking on one of the most powerful companies on the planet, accusing Apple of being a monopoly, crushing its competition while making iPhones even more expensive.
Consumers should not have to pay higher prices because companies break the law.
Attorney General Merrick Garland claiming that Apple's 70% domination over the U.S. smartphone market is a result of illegal behavior. For example, DOJ says Apple deliberately makes messaging between iPhone users and those using competing devices more difficult.
For example, if an iPhone user messages a non-iPhone user in Apple Messages, the text appears not only as a green bubble, but incorporates limited functionality. The conversation is not encrypted, videos are pixelated and grainy, and users cannot edit messages or see typing indicators.
The DOJ alleges the tech giant blocks third-party apps and other services from competing with Apple products, like denying iPhone users access to any other digital wallet tap-to-pay service other than Apple Pay. Tonight, Apple pushing back, saying in part, this lawsuit threatens who we are and the principles that set Apple products apart. If successful, it would hinder our ability to create the kind of technology people expect from Apple. Tonight, Apple basically telling DOJ, see you in court. The company is expected to file a legal response soon. Apple officials said in a statement tonight, DOJ's lawsuit is wrong on the facts and the law. David?
More to come on this, Pierre Thomas tonight. Pierre, thank you. The U.S. tonight calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and demanding Hamas release all the hostages. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken in Cairo saying the U.S. submitted a draft resolution to the UN Security Council trying to pressure both sides to agree to a truce. It comes after President Biden warned Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu against an offensive in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. Tonight, meanwhile, House Speaker Mike Johnson has invited Netanyahu to address the U.S. Congress. Tonight, Major League Baseball's highest paid star and new questions involving a gambling scandal. The LA Dodgers' Shohei Ohtani, did he know about his interpreter's gambling debts? And did the baseball star help his interpreter pay some of those debts? But our partners at ESPN are now reporting tonight. Here's Whit Johnson.
Tonight, the highest paid athlete in American sports, Shohei Ohtani, now saying he's been the victim of a massive theft.
Rips one and he gets on top of it. And Shohei Ohtani's first hit of 2024.
Ohtani's longtime friend and interpreter, Ippei Misuhara, fired by the Los Angeles Dodgers after allegedly stealing $4.5 million from the baseball phenom to pay off gambling debts. The problem is, that story has changed. At one point, the interpreter saying the baseball star Ohtani knew about his gambling debts and was helping him pay them.
What's really important here is that the story changed.
The baseball star's interpreter, Misuhara, allegedly placing wagers with an illegal sportsbook under investigation by federal authorities, paying back losses with money from Ohtani's bank account. ESPN reviewing bank documents, reportedly showing Ohtani's name on two $500,000 payments made last year. Before the Dodgers' first game Wednesday, the interpreter initially saying Ohtani was aware of the payments, but later telling ESPN he lied and that he is solely responsible.
He said that Ohtani had no knowledge of his gaming debts and had not paid the money through the wire transfers.
A spokesperson for Ohtani now saying they're turning the matter over to authorities.
And David, the interpreter claims he didn't know the bets he made were illegal and that he never bet on baseball. But tonight, what remains unclear is exactly how those massive bank transfers were made under Ohtani's name. David?
A lot of unanswered questions. Whit Johnson on this tonight. Thanks to you and to ESPN. We turn tonight to news of a major medical breakthrough. In Boston, surgeons transplanting a kidney from a genetically engineered pig into a 62-year-old patient. The doctor today breaking down as he talked about this new breakthrough and what this could mean for so many. Here's ABC Stephanie Ramos.
Tonight, a groundbreaking milestone bringing hope to hundreds of thousands of Americans with kidney failure.
It was truly the most beautiful kidney I have ever seen.
Surgeons at Massachusetts General Hospital say they transplanted a pig's kidney into a living human for the first time. Doctors say the patient, Rick Slayman, a 62-year-old black man, had been desperately sick on dialysis.
He literally said, I just can't go on like this. I don't want to go on like this.
Black Americans are nearly 4 times more likely than white people to suffer end-stage kidney disease. Since the transplant 5 days ago, Slayman is recovering well and could soon go home. Of the nearly 89,000 people waiting for a kidney, about 16,000 a year will get one. If this transplant is successful and future research shows it's safe, doctors hope it could pave the way for an endless supply of pig kidneys and make the need for long-term dialysis obsolete, but that could take years. the leader of the transplant team today overwhelmed with emotion.
I cannot think of a more dedicated team in the world, and I'm honored to be part of it.
So far, doctors say the patient's new kidney seems to be functional. Doctors will continue to monitor him for any signs of rejection, but doctors say he is improving every day. David.
Everyone pulling for that patient. Stephanie, thank you. We turn now to the economy tonight and another record day for the stock market. In fact, the Dow tonight nearing a remarkable new milestone. The Dow gaining 269 points today, finishing the day at 39,781, closing in on that 40,000 milestone. The Dow more than doubling its value in the last 4 years, bringing some good news tonight for 401ks after COVID and the economic strain that came with it. Let's get right to ABC's Ariel Resha. She's live on Wall Street tonight as the Dow nears 40,000. Ariel?
Hey, David, for the second day in a row, the market surging into record territory. The Fed just yesterday holding interest rates steady and signaling that 3 cuts could be coming by the end of the year. Some analysts predicting that the first cut could come as early as June. And of course, that could help offset the cost of credit card debt as well as car loans. But Americans are already feeling the stock market surge in their retirement accounts with 401ks averaging. They're up about $12,000. And I want to show you just how far we've come since the stock market crashed at the top of the pandemic. The Dow nearly doubling over the course of the past 4 years. Of course, reason to hope and positive signs of encouragement for so many Americans feeling the pinch. David.
Ariel Resha live on Wall Street. And of course, we'll be watching it again tomorrow. Ariel, thank you. When we come back here tonight, the daring rescue here in New York City, police officers saving a man who was unconscious on the subway tracks, the trains approaching the station. Also, the incredible images tonight, a hot air balloon hitting power lines, and you'll see it. And tonight we honor our heroes, the once top secret ghost army of World War II, and the honor today, you'll hear what they said. Tonight, the FAA and the NTSB are investigating a frightening hot air balloon crash in Rochester, Minnesota, southeast of Minneapolis. The balloon with 3 people, look at this, aboard, hitting the power lines there, the basket separating from the balloon and then crashing to the ground. Tonight, one official calling it a miracle that no one was seriously hurt. Just incredible. In New York City tonight, the daring rescue on the subway tracks. Newly released body camera video tonight showing NYPD officers jumping onto the subway tracks in Brooklyn to rescue an unconscious man. Trains were approaching the station, officers signaling those trains with their flashlights. The officers carefully avoiding 2 live third rails, able to bring that man to safety and salute those officers. When we come back here tonight, the nationwide DMV outage today, and the mega lotteries keep growing. What they're up to tonight, and when to buy tickets. The index and DMV services across the country are back up and running tonight after a nationwide outage. The network that connects DMV's offices to each other and verification services going down, creating headaches for those in line. Services for a time unavailable. Back up tonight, but no word yet on a cause. Also, no winners yet. The Mega Millions at $977 million and growing. The drawing is tomorrow night. Powerball on Saturday, $750 million and growing. When we come back tonight, our World War II heroes who made up the Ghost Army, what they did, and the secret they kept for decades. The Ghost Army of World War II, America Strong. Tonight, the new honor for a mission so secret, many who knew about it, who were part of it, took it to the grave. World War II, 1,300 U.S. soldiers, part of the so-called Ghost Army. Top secret military units deployed to fool the Nazis. Using inflatable rubber trucks, inflatable tanks and artillery, even inflatable soldiers. Meant to look real from the air and from a distance, even blaring sound effects of tanks heard miles away. The strategy, deceiving enemy forces, freeing up real units to strike unexpectedly, saving an estimated 15,000 to 30,000 lives, helping to defeat the Nazis. The mission remained top secret for 50 years, declassified in 1996. And tonight, nearly 80 years later, the Ghost Army now recognized with the Congressional Gold Medal. 3 of those veterans were right there today. Private Seymour Nussenbaum, then and now. Private John Chrisman, then and today. And Private Bernie Bluestein, then and now. Today, honoring his fellow soldiers.
Took a lot of hard work with a lot of hardworking people. And I'm very proud and happy to be here to receive this honor. Thank you.
We salute them too. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Good night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Woodman. Have a good life.